The priest's hands were on her throat when Jordan realized she'd been sleeping with a lie. Not choking, teaching. Pressure points, how to break free if someone grabbed her. But his fingers lingered 3 seconds too long. She felt his pulse hammering against her skin. Father Mateo Cruz wasn't supposed to touch her like this, wasn't supposed to look at her with eyes that stripped away his collar in 7 years of supposed redemption. "If they find you," he whispered, mouth so close his breath heated her lips. "They won't ask questions first." Jordan Ellis pressed back against the basement wall of the Mexican church, trapped between concrete and a man who'd spent the last month teaching her to disappear. The USB drive between her breasts, the one containing evidence that could destroy the Sinaloa cartel's American money operation, suddenly felt like a bomb. "Then teach me how to make them regret it," she breathed. His grip tightened, not on her throat, on his control. What she didn't know, Mateo wasn't just any priest. He was the cartel's former accountant, the one who'd trained her dead mentor, the one who'd been watching her since the moment she stumbled through those church doors 36 hours ago, soaked in rain and terror. And he'd just gotten word that she had 72 hours before they came for her, before they came for both of them. Rain hammered the ancient doors of Basilica de Nuestra Señora de la Paz like fists demanding entry. Jordan Ellis crashed through them at 2:47 a.m., designer heels ruined, mascara painting black rivers down her brown skin, expensive watch still gleaming on her wrist despite 36 hours of running. Boston to Dallas, Dallas to a cargo flight that asked no questions. Now Mexico City, where the American government's reach supposedly ended and God's protection supposedly began. She was wrong on both counts. Father Mateo Cruz heard the door before he saw her. He was alone in the sanctuary, doing what he did every night at this hour, reviewing old ledgers, his own handwriting from 7 years ago when he balanced blood money instead of prayer books, numbers that added up to bodies, transactions that funded terrorism, human trafficking, and the kind of violence that made the evening news seem sanitized. He looked up and saw her. Black American woman, late 20s, terror in her eyes, but steel in her spine. The expensive cut of her clothes despite the damage, the way she held that waterproof laptop bag like it contained her beating heart, an accountant running from numbers that added up to murder. "I need sanctuary," Jordan gasped, stumbling toward the altar. "Legal sanctuary. I know my rights under international." "You're American." Mateo's voice cut through the cavernous space, perfect English with just a trace of Monterey accent. "You're scared, and you think a church is a loophole." He stood from the pew, and she noticed he moved wrong, too controlled, too aware of his surroundings. "It's not. But come inside anyway." Jordan's accountant brain cataloged details. Young priest, early 30s, hands too steady, posture too military, the clerical collar sitting on his throat like a costume he hadn't quite grown into. "Who are you running from?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "People who count bodies like receipts." Mateo's jaw tightened. She just quoted something he'd said 7 years ago, in his old life. Before the scars, before the collar, before he'd traded counting blood money for counting rosary beads. "Then you understand," he said quietly, "that right and wrong mean nothing to people like that. Then teach me." The words came out like a challenge, and something shifted in the air between them. Mateo studied her face, seeing himself reflected back. That moment when you realize the rules you believed in are just pretty lies. "What's your name?" Jordan Ellis." "I'm Father Mateo Cruz." He gestured toward the back of the church. "Come, we need to get you out of sight before morning mass." As they walked through the shadowed nave, Jordan noticed the locked drawer in the sacristy office, fresh scratches around the keyhole, the kind you get from frequent access. "You're not just a priest, are you?" she asked. Mateo paused, his back to her. "Neither are you just an accountant." The basement apartment smelled like disuse and old incense. Mateo flicked on a single lamp, revealing a space that was functional but sparse. A bed, a desk, a tiny bathroom behind a curtain. "The rules," he began, and his voice had shifted into something harder. Military. "You stay here. No phone, no internet, no contact with anyone. You attend morning mass as Sister Lucia, a visiting nun from Oaxaca. You learn Spanish fast enough to fake it, and you never—" He stepped closer, invading her space deliberately. Go into my private quarters upstairs. Jordan lifted her chin, refusing to back down. What if I need you? There's a bell by the sacristy, once for emergency, twice for everything else. His eyes traveled over her face, cataloging her the way she'd cataloged him. How long have you been running? 36 hours. How'd you know to come here? Jordan's hand went to the laptop bag. My mentor, the woman who taught me forensic accounting, she left me a note before she died, before they made it look like she killed herself. Her voice cracked. It just said, if it goes wrong, find Father Cruz in Mexico City. He'll understand. The blood drained from Mateo's face. What was her name? Diane Reyes. The name hung between them like a ghost. I knew Diane, Mateo said finally, voice hollow. 7 years ago, before I was this. He touched his collar. I trained her, taught her how to follow the money, how to spot laundering patterns, how to... He stopped. She went straight, turned informant, and he couldn't finish. You stayed, Jordan whispered, understanding flooding through her. I tried to leave. They convinced me otherwise. He turned, and his shirt rode up just enough to reveal the edge of a scar. Thick, deliberate, the kind carved as a message. The church was my deal, my silence for sanctuary. I balance their books, I tell no one, and they let me pretend to be holy. Jordan's mind raced. Then the evidence I have makes you a dead woman walking, and me too if they find out I'm hiding you. Why are you helping me? Mateo looked at her then, really looked, and something raw crossed his face. Because Diane tried to finish what I started and couldn't, and they killed her for it. I owe her a debt. He moved toward the door. Lock this behind me. Get some sleep. At 6 a.m., you become Sister Lucia. I'll teach you how to be invisible. And then what? Then I teach you how to survive long enough to make your evidence matter. Jordan couldn't sleep. The walls pressed in, suffocating. Above her, she heard footsteps. Mateo pacing. She counted. 37 steps, turned, 37 steps back. Accountant's brain, always counting. At 11:34 p.m., she climbed the stairs. She found him in the nave, standing before the altar in civilian clothes, dark jeans that hugged his hips, white t-shirt stretched across shoulders that didn't belong on a priest. A rosary was wrapped around his knuckles like brass knuckles, and he was smoking a cigarette. I didn't know priests smoked, Jordan said from the shadows. Mateo didn't startle. They don't. But accountants for the Sinaloa cartel do. He held out the cigarette. Want some? She shouldn't. She did anyway. Crossed the space between them and took it from his fingers, their skin touching briefly. The smoke burned her throat, but she didn't cough. Do you actually believe in this? She asked, gesturing to the altar, the crucifix, the saints watching from their alcoves. God, forgiveness, redemption, all of it. I believe in consequences, Mateo said. God's just the auditor who checks the final balance. Despite everything, Jordan almost laughed. That's the most accountant answer a priest has ever given. This time, Mateo did smile, barely. What's on the USB drive, Jordan? 3 years of forensic evidence, wire transfers, shell companies, real estate purchases, the American bankers who make the cartel's money look legitimate. She took another drag. Diane spent 5 years building the case. When she died, I took over, finished what she started. And now you're here because you think exposing them will matter. Doesn't it? Mateo's smile faded. It matters, but not the way you think. These people don't go to prison, Jordan. They buy judges, they buy politicians, they buy silence. He took the cigarette back. The ones who can't be bought, they disappear. Like Diane. Like Diane. Jordan felt tears threaten and shoved them down. She had a daughter, 16 years old. At the funeral, that girl sobbed and blamed herself, thinking her mom killed herself because of something she did wrong. And I couldn't. Tell her the truth because it would paint a target on her back too. Something in Mateo's expression shifted, softened. He stubbed out the cigarette and turned to face her fully. I know what it's like to carry bodies you can't bury properly. They stood 3 feet apart, close enough that Jordan could see the faint scar on his jawline, the exhaustion written in the lines around his eyes. If we survive this, she whispered, what do you want? Not penance, not redemption. Just What do you want that has nothing to do with paying for your past? Mateo's gaze dropped to her mouth, then back to her eyes. The air between them went electric. Ask me again when we're not standing in a church. But he didn't step back, neither did she. It's still a church in the basement, Jordan said. Jordan, I'm not asking you to break your vows. I'm asking what you want. His hand came up, almost touching her face before he caught himself. I want to not feel like I'm one of them anymore. I want to believe I can still be someone worth knowing. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. And I want to stop thinking about what it would feel like to kiss you every time you look at me like that. Jordan's breath caught. Like what? Like I'm a man before I'm a priest. The words hung between them, confession and accusation. Jordan stepped back first, breaking the spell. 6 a.m., morning mass, Sister Lucia. She turned toward the basement stairs. Teach me how to disappear, Father Cruz, before we both forget why that matters. She left him standing in the nave, still holding the burned-out cigarette, looking like a man who'd just lost a battle with himself. Upstairs in his room, Mateo would spend the next 3 hours not praying, but fighting the urge to go back down those stairs and finish what they'd started. Below, Jordan would press her back against the locked door and slide down to the floor, touching her lips and wondering what the hell she was doing, falling for a priest who used to count blood money. Neither would sleep. Both would pretend, come morning, that nothing had changed. But it had. Morning mass at 6 a.m. Jordan wore a borrowed habit that smelled like mothballs and decades of prayer. Mateo had spent 2 hours drilling her, how to hold rosary beads, when to kneel, what to say when people greeted her in Spanish. Keep your head down, he'd instructed, his fingers adjusting her veil with clinical precision that couldn't quite hide the tremor in his hands. Make yourself boring, forgettable. But Jordan was neither, and they both knew it. She made it through mass without blowing her cover. Afterward, as the elderly parishioners filed out, one woman, Senora Martinez, grabbed Jordan's hand. Sister Lucia, you must come to lunch on Sunday. Meet my grandson. Such a good boy, works in banking. Mateo intervened smoothly, a hand at the small of Jordan's back that burned through the fabric. Sister Lucia is very busy with archival work, Senora. Perhaps another time. When they were alone in the sacristy, Jordan rounded on him. Banking? Really? It's a test. Mateo locked the door. Senora Martinez's grandson works for one of the Cartel's shell companies. If she's inviting you to meet him, someone's already noticed you. They're checking if you're real. Fear flickered across Jordan's face before she buried it. So what do? We make you real. He pulled out a folder filled with documents, fake background, convent records, even photographs doctored to show Sister Lucia at various church events. From now on, you are exactly who this paperwork says you are. You memorize every detail. Over the next 3 weeks, Mateo taught her more than just a cover story. He taught her to disappear. Mornings, mass, then Spanish lessons, where he corrected her accent with a patience that felt like intimacy. Afternoons, they walked through the markets, and he showed her how to spot watchers, the man who didn't react when police passed, the woman who touched her phone too often, the vendor who made eye contact with the wrong people. See the guy at the fruit stand? Third one from the left, Mateo murmured, his hand casually at her elbow as they navigated the crowd. He's Cartel. Watch how he positions himself, back to the wall, eyes on the exits. Jordan filed the information away, hyper-aware of Mateo's proximity. He stood closer when explaining danger. His voice dropped lower when warning her, and every accidental touch felt calculated, even when it wasn't. Evenings. They reviewed her evidence piece by piece. Mateo explained the cartel's financial infrastructure with the precision of someone who'd built it, his voice going flat and distant when discussing transactions he'd personally processed. This shell company in the Caymans, I set that up in 2016. The real estate portfolio in Miami? My recommendation, he pointed to a wire transfer. This amount, sent on this date. I remember it because it was the day I decided I couldn't do this anymore. It was payment for a hit on a journalist. He had 3 kids. Jordan watched his face carefully. What changed? I saw a photograph. The journalist's daughter at his funeral. She was wearing his press badge around her neck like a necklace. Mateo's jaw worked. She looked exactly like my sister. Same age, same eyes, same... He stopped. I couldn't look at spreadsheets without seeing obituaries after that. The bell tower became their refuge, high above the city where the sounds of traffic and life faded to white noise, where no one could overhear. Jordan found Mateo there late one afternoon, golden hour light painting the bells bronze. He was smoking again. "You're going to get lung cancer," she said, climbing the last step. "Add it to the list of things that'll kill me." But he offered her the cigarette anyway. They fell into their rhythm, passing it back and forth, shoulders almost touching as they looked out over Mexico City's sprawl. The sunset was violent shades of orange and red, like the sky was bleeding. "Tell me about Oakland," Mateo said suddenly. "Your family, what you left behind." Jordan hadn't talked about home since arriving. Now, with nicotine and exhaustion lowering her defenses, the words came. "My mom cleaned houses to put me through college. My brother's in construction. They're so proud of me. First one with a degree, first one in a suit instead of work boots." She laughed bitterly. "What are they going to think when they find out I'm a fugitive?" "That you're brave," Mateo said, "that you stood up when it mattered. Or that I was stupid, that I should have just done my job, collected my paycheck, looked the other way like everyone else." She took the cigarette. "Diane used to say, 'Numbers don't lie, Jordan, people do, so trust the numbers.' She taught me that forensic accounting could fix broken systems, make them work right." "The system isn't broken," Mateo said quietly. "It's working exactly as designed, to protect people like the ones we're running from." The cigarette burned down between them, forgotten. Jordan's fingers brushed his as she reached for it, and neither moved. The touch became a hold. His thumb traced circles on her palm. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "What you did before all this?" Mateo didn't answer immediately. When he did, it was raw. "Every single day, every mass I perform, I think about the families I helped destroy, the bodies my spreadsheets paid for, the kids who'll grow up without fathers because I made sure the money flowed to the right sicarios." He looked at her directly. "The only thing I regret more is that I'm good at this, at hiding people, reading danger, staying invisible. Because I learned from the best, from the people who trained me to help them hide money and bodies." Jordan reached for his face, cupping his jaw. "If we survive this, you're not going back to counting rosaries and pretending to be holy. You're going to actually live. And what about you? I'm going to make Diane's evidence matter, even if it means spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder." Mateo turned his head, pressing his lips to her palm. It wasn't a kiss exactly, more like a prayer against her skin. "I don't know how to want things anymore without it turning into penance." "Then learn." His other hand came up, fingers threading through her hair that she'd started wearing down around him. They were so close now, breath mingling, hearts racing. "This is a bad idea," Mateo whispered. "Everything about this situation is a bad idea." "Jordan, don't," she pulled back slightly. "Don't tell me all the reasons why we can't. Just tell me if you want to." His answer was in his eyes, hunger, fear, longing, guilt, all churning together. "More than I've wanted anything in 7 years. Then, a bell chimed from below. The church's warning system. Someone had entered without authorization. They broke apart instantly, Mateo's training kicking in. "Get to the basement, now. Don't stop for anything." "What about, I'll handle it, move." Jordan ran, but not before seeing Mateo's face transform, the conflicted man disappearing, replaced by the cold, calculating operative he used to be. Bishop Romero returned the next day with a smile that didn't reach his eyes and questions that cut too close to truth. "Tell me about Sister Lucia," he said over breakfast, voice casual as a knife between ribs. Mateo had prepared for this. "From Oaxaca, helping with archival work." "Strange. I spoke with the Archbishop there yesterday. He didn't mention sending anyone." Romero's eyes were sharp, but perhaps it was an informal arrangement? The trap had teeth. That evening, Romero invited Sister Lucia to dinner with the Archdiocese Council. Mateo couldn't refuse without raising suspicion. 3 hours of preparation. Mateo drilled Jordan on convent life, saints' feast days, proper forms of address. His hands shook as he adjusted her veil, standing so close she could count his eyelashes. "If anyone asks something you don't know, quote Job," he instructed. "Everyone interprets suffering differently, so your answer can be vague and still sound profound." "Mateo," she touched his chest, feeling his heart hammer. "What if I mess up?" "You won't." His hand covered hers. You're brilliant at becoming what people expect to see. It's what accountants do. We blend into boardrooms and make numbers, tell whatever story needs telling. The dinner was a performance. Jordan channeled every boardroom, every client meeting where she'd been underestimated for being young, black, female, and used it. She became Sister Lucia so thoroughly that even Mateo almost believed it, until the cartel lawyer arrived. His donation to the archdiocese bought him a seat at the table. His eyes, cold, assessing, bought him a longer look at Jordan than was appropriate. "Sister, have we met before?" he asked in flawless English. "You seem familiar." Jordan's training kicked in. Perhaps in God's house, all faces become familiar. Mateo saw it. The lawyer's phone angled subtly, capturing a photo. Facial recognition software. 72 hours until they had confirmation. Jordan was already dead. Mateo didn't speak until they were back in the basement, door locked, room swept for devices. Then he erupted. "He photographed you. If he runs facial recognition, when he runs it, your face will match to FBI witness protection inquiries, Interpol alerts, and the cartel's own databases." His hands fisted in his hair. "I should never have let you go to that dinner. I should have..." "Then we leave," Jordan cut in. "Tonight. Right now." "And go where?" Mateo rounded on her. "You think sanctuary works like switching hotels? The moment we step outside, you're exposed. At least here, the church is neutral ground." "Is it?" Jordan's voice rose. "Because from where I'm standing, the church is just another cage. You've kept me trapped here for weeks while teaching me all these survival skills I can't use because I'm locked in a goddamn basement. I'm keeping you alive. By controlling where I go, what I do, who I talk to." She stepped closer, fury in her eyes. "That's not protection, Mateo. That's just another kind of prison. How is this different from what the cartel would do?" The accusation hung between them like smoke. Mateo's face went white. "How dare you? No, how dare you?" Jordan's hands were shaking. "You act like you're so different from them, like your collar makes you holy, but you're using the same playbook. Control through fear, isolation, making me dependent on you for every piece of information, every decision. That's not..." But Mateo stopped because somewhere in the dark parts of his brain, he recognized the pattern. Jordan's fury cracked into something more vulnerable. "Diane's daughter is out there thinking her mother was too weak to live, and I can't even send her a message because you have my phone locked in your desk. How many days until the lawyer's facial recognition comes back? 3? 2? When were you planning to tell me we're out of time? When I figured out how to keep you alive through it. Maybe I don't want to survive if survival means hiding in basements and pretending to be someone I'm not." Tears streaked down her face. "I watched Diane's daughter at that funeral. She's 16. She sobbed and asked me if she should have been a better kid, if that would have made her mom want to stay alive. And I had to lie to her, Mateo. I had to smile and tell her it wasn't her fault when the truth is, her mother was murdered for trying to do the right thing." Mateo crossed to her in 2 steps, pulling her against his chest. She fought him for 3 seconds before collapsing into it, sobbing into his shirt. "I know," he murmured into her hair. "I know what it's like to carry bodies you can't bury, to hold secrets that rot you from the inside." His hand stroked her back. "But Jordan, if I lose you to them, if they put a bullet in your head because I didn't keep you safe, I won't survive it, not again." She pulled back to look at him. "What do you mean again?" Mateo's face was devastated. "Diane wasn't just my colleague, she was..." He couldn't finish. Understanding flooded Jordan's face. "You loved her. I trained her, taught her everything, and when she wanted out, wanted to go straight and testify, I helped her build the case. I gave her the access, the contacts, the shell company details." His voice broke. "And then they killed her because someone told them she was cooperating, someone inside her circle, someone she trusted." "You think it was you?" Jordan whispered. "That they traced it back?" "I know it was me. They came to me after, told me it was a warning, that my student had gotten herself killed by being righteous. They showed me photos of her daughter at the funeral as a reminder. Anyone I care about becomes leverage." Jordan touched his face. "Then, why risk it with me?" "Because I can't let her death mean nothing. Because you finishing her work means something." He caught her hand against his cheek. "And because the first time you looked at me like I was a man instead of a monster, I was already lost." The air shifted. Jordan rose on her toes, bringing her mouth within inches of his. I don't want to die having never... Don't. But his hands were already on her waist. Don't ask me for something I can't give you. Can't or won't. Jordan, I'm a priest. I made vows. That you made for the wrong reasons, she challenged. You said so yourself. You're not here because you found God. You're here because you made a deal with devils wearing church clothes. Mateo's control was paper thin. If I start this, I won't stop. I've spent 7 years starving, and you're standing here offering yourself like a woman who wants you? Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. His grip tightened on her waist, pulling her flush against it. She felt his heart racing, felt the evidence of his desire pressed between them, felt every muscle in his body locked in the effort of not taking what she was offering. Ask me again, he growled, when we're not about to die. When there's a future that doesn't end with your body in a ditch. When I can give you more than a desperate fuck in a church basement because we're terrified and out of options. Jordan's hand slid up his chest over his racing heart. You keep talking about me dying like it's inevitable. Maybe that's why you won't touch me, because if you let yourself want something, they can take it away. That's how they control you. The words hit like a punch. Get out, Mateo said, voice strangled. Get out before I do something we'll both regret. Mateo, now. She left, walked down to her basement cage, hearing the click of the lock from outside for the first time in weeks. He'd locked her in. Above, she heard something shatter, glass, followed by a sound that might have been a sob or a scream or both. The next morning, Bishop Romero called Mateo to his office. On the desk, surveillance photos, Jordan entering the church, Jordan at the market with Mateo, Jordan in the bell tower, looking at Mateo the way no nun should look at a priest. I know who she is, Romero said quietly. Jordan Ellis, American fugitive, witness protection reject. The FBI has extradition requests filed. The cartels have something much worse. Insurance policies. He slid another photo across. Jordan's brother in Oakland, her niece, timestamps from yesterday. You have 48 hours to turn her over to proper authorities, or I do it myself. Romero's face was sympathetic but firm. And Mateo, I know your confession. I know what you did before you found God. If this becomes a scandal, I cannot protect you. Mateo stared at the photos, feeling the walls close in. She trusted me, he said, then proved that trust is worth something. Give her a chance at a real life, instead of hiding in our basement. They'll kill her? Perhaps, or perhaps the American authorities can actually protect her. Romero stood. You've spent 7 years trying to balance the ledger, Mateo. How many more lives will you destroy trying to save one? Mateo went straight to Jordan's room, unlocking it with shaking hands. She was sitting on the bed, already packed. I heard. Thin walls. Jordan, don't. She held up a hand. Don't tell me you're doing this for my own good. Just admit it. You're choosing your deal with the church over me. You're choosing your cage. I'm choosing your life. No, she stood furious. You're choosing to not choose me. There's a difference. She grabbed her bag. I trusted you. Thought you were different from them. Mateo's composure finally cracked. He crossed to her, backing her against the wall the way he'd taught her attackers might. Except his eyes were desperate, not dangerous. You want to know what this was? His voice was ragged. It was me trying to keep you alive while falling in love with you anyway. While knowing that loving you makes you a target. While understanding that the best thing I can do for you is let you go. Then let me go, Jordan whispered. Stop locking doors. Stop making choices for me. He kissed her. 7 years of denial exploding in one moment. His mouth crashed against hers with hunger and fury and desperation. She kissed back with equal force, hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer even as her mind screamed this was goodbye. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Mateo pressed his forehead to hers. I can't run with you, he said. They'll always find me. I carry their secrets. The moment I leave, everyone I've protected dies. Jordan touched his face gently. Then I guess we were always doomed, weren't we? She pulled the USB drive from her bra, pressed it into his hand. Give it to the FBI. Tell them I died. Tell them whatever you need to. She grabbed her bag. I'm done running toward men who can't run with me. Jordan, wait. But she was already climbing the stairs, walking out of the basement for the first time in weeks without permission. Mateo stood frozen, drive in his hand, watching her go. He didn't follow. That was his first mistake. His second was not checking whether the church was being watched. At 4 a.m., Jordan was in the nave trying to pray, though she'd never believed before. She'd made peace with being caught, with facing whatever came next. But it wasn't the authorities who came. 3 men, professional. They disabled the security system with military efficiency, picked the locks like breathing, moved through shadows like they were born to them. Cartel. They were there for 2 things: Mateo's ledgers and the woman who'd stolen their secrets. Jordan heard them first, the whisper of footsteps too practiced to be parishioners. She'd learned enough from Mateo to recognize the pattern. She pressed herself behind the altar, hand, closing around the heavy brass candlestick she'd noticed weeks ago. Mateo heard them second. He'd been awake, as always, standing in his window watching the church where he'd last seen Jordan. Old habits. When he spotted the figures entering, his body moved before his mind caught up, grabbing the knife he kept taped under his desk, ditching the collar, becoming the man he used to be. The fight was brutal. 3 against 1, except Mateo knew their training because he'd been trained by the same people. He moved through the sanctuary like violence choreographed, disarming one, breaking another's nose, but there were 3 of them, and only one of him. Jordan didn't hide. She smashed the window with the candlestick, triggering the old alarm system. Then she swung at the nearest attacker, connecting with his temple hard enough to drop him. "You taught me pressure points," she gasped at Mateo as they fought back to back. "Remember?" Despite everything, Mateo almost smiled. "I remember." But they were outnumbered. The leader, a man named Diego who Mateo recognized from his old life, had a gun to Jordan's head within seconds. Another man forced Mateo to his knees. "The ledgers, Padre," Diego said, almost friendly, "and we'll make her death quick, painless even." Mateo made the calculation instantly. "The ledgers are gone. I sent them to the FBI 3 hours ago. Every name, every account, every shell company, including yours, Diego." It was a lie. The ledgers were still in his desk, but Mateo sold it with the cold precision of the accountant he used to be, letting Diego see the man he'd once known, the one who could lie about millions with a straight face. Diego laughed. "You think we didn't plan for that?" He showed Mateo his phone, a message thread, supposedly from Sister Lucia's email to the cartel, offering Jordan's evidence in exchange for safe passage. "I made a deal with your bosses, your little nun's USB drive for transportation out of Mexico, for both of us." Jordan's face went white. "I never sent that." But the message was detailed, convincing, including information only she would know. Diego wanted them to destroy each other. "Did you?" Mateo asked, and in that moment of doubt, after everything, Jordan saw the truth. They would never trust each other enough to survive. "I didn't," she said quietly. "But you don't believe me. You think I'd sell you out to save myself." Mateo couldn't finish because part of him wondered. Part of him would always wonder, trained as he was to trust no one. The hesitation cost them. Diego fired, not at Jordan, at Mateo. The bullet caught his shoulder, spinning him backward. Jordan screamed. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Bishop Romero had called them when the alarm triggered. The cartel men melted into shadows, but not before Diego grabbed Jordan by the hair. "You're coming with us." Jordan drove her elbow into his throat, exactly like Mateo had taught her. Diego released her, choking, and she ran to Mateo, who was bleeding on the sanctuary floor. "Stay awake," she begged, pressing her hands to his shoulder. "Don't you dare die on me now." Mateo's eyes were unfocused. I'm sorry, I doubted. Shut up and stay alive." The police burst in seconds later. The hospital was sterile and cold. Mateo woke to find himself handcuffed to the bed, Jordan nowhere in sight. A detective explained. She'd been extradited to the United States. Witness protection, probably. He was under investigation by both the Mexican authorities and the Archdiocese. Bishop Romero visited once. "You broke your vows, Mateo. Not the celibacy. Though that too, if the way you looked at her in those photos means what I think it means. You broke your vow to put God first." "I put her life first," Mateo said. "Maybe that's the most honest thing I've done in 7 years. And was it worth it? She's gone. You're here. What did your sacrifice accomplish?" Mateo had no answer. Through a sympathetic nurse, he managed to send Jordan one message. Her response came 2 days later, delivered by the same nurse. Jordan sat in a FBI safe house in Virginia, testifying in closed hearings. Her evidence brought down 17 American bankers, froze billions in cartel assets, and exposed corruption that went all the way to Congress. But the cartel still operated, just with different money men. Diane's daughter learned the truth, that her mother hadn't killed herself, that she'd been murdered for trying to expose evil. The girl started a foundation in her mother's name, scholarships for kids whose parents died fighting injustice. Jordan was offered witness protection with a new identity. She declined. Instead, she started a forensic accounting firm specializing in cartel finances, working with prosecutors, journalists, activists, dangerous but purposeful. Late at night, she thought about Mateo, wondered if he thought about her, wondered if he'd forgiven her for leaving, wondered if she'd forgiven him for doubting. Mateo had left the priesthood, not because of scandal, the church buried that quietly, but because he'd finally admitted he took vows for the wrong reasons. Penance, not calling. He went to a monastery in Guanajuato where former cartel members went to rebuild their lives. He taught them accounting, legitimate accounting, helping them find legal work, understand taxes, manage small businesses. It was smaller than saving the world, but it was real. He thought about Jordan every day, wondered if she was safe, wondered if she'd ever forgive him for choosing doubt in the moment she needed his trust most. Then, 6 months and 17 days after the hospital, a package arrived. Inside, copies of his ledgers. The note read, Mateo stood in the monastery courtyard holding the note, hands shaking. One of his students, a former enforcer turned carpenter, asked, "Bad news?" "No," Mateo said quietly. "A second chance." "You going to take it?" Mateo looked at the note, at its Jordan's handwriting, at the address of the border crossing. "I don't know if I deserve it," the former enforcer laughed. "Man, none of us deserve second chances. That's why they're called grace. Question is, you brave enough to accept it?" The first Thursday of the month. Sunset painting the border crossing in shades of gold and rust. Jordan stood on the American side, watching people flow between nations, wondering if this was stupid, if he'd come, if he even wanted to. She'd been coming for 3 months now. 3 months of waiting, watching the sunset, then walking away alone. But today, Mateo stepped out of the crowd on the Mexican side. Their eyes met across 50 yards and an international boundary. He looked different, thinner, hair longer, no collar, wearing jeans and a button-down that made him look like a professor instead of a priest. But his eyes were the same, haunted and hungry and full of things he couldn't say. Jordan's heart stuttered. He crossed toward her slowly, stopping at the boundary line. "You came," she said. "You waited." His voice was rougher than she remembered. 3 months? 3 months? Why? Jordan met his eyes. "Because I said I would, and because I wanted to see if you'd walk through the door." Mateo looked down at the line between countries, between his old life and whatever came next. "I turned over my ledgers, all of them. Names, dates, accounts, everything I've been holding on to for 7 years. I know, I heard, 17 more arrests. They'll kill me if they find me. Probably. And you're still here?" "I'm still here." Jordan stepped closer to the line. "I don't forgive easily, Mateo. And I haven't forgotten that you kept me prisoner, that you doubted me when it mattered most, that you chose your cage over trusting me. I know." His hands fisted at his sides. "I know I failed you. But I also haven't forgotten that you taught me to fight, that you burned your only insurance to set me free, that you loved me enough to let me go even when it destroyed you." She paused. "So I'm not offering forgiveness. I'm offering something harder, a chance to start over, honestly this time. No cages, no lies." Mateo stepped across the border. It was just one step, but it was everything. Leaving Mexico, leaving his deal, leaving the last piece of his old life behind. "I don't know if we get to be happy after what we've done and seen," he said. "Then let's just try honest." Jordan held out her hand. "Hi, I'm Jordan Ellis. I'm a forensic accountant who hunts cartel money and has nightmares about guns and can't look at spreadsheets without seeing the people behind the numbers." Mateo took her hand. His grip was warm, solid, real. "Mateo Cruz, former accountant for the Sinaloa cartel. I left the priesthood because I was hiding, not healing. I have panic attacks in churches now, and I'm probably going to be looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. Sounds terrible. Completely. A ghost of his, old almost smile. Want to get coffee anyway? The cafe in Juarez was loud and crowded and blessedly normal. They sat across from each other, two people who'd seen too much trying to figure out if they could see each other clearly. I can't do the damaged souls healing each other thing, Jordan said. I've got my own work, my own life I'm building. I'm not going to be your redemption. Good, Mateo said. I'm not looking for absolution through love. I've had 6 months of therapy, and my therapist says I need to find meaning separate from other people's validation. Despite everything, Jordan laughed. You're in therapy? Mandatory for former cartel members in the monastery program. He stirred his coffee. Turns out, trauma doesn't care about your collar or your intentions. You still have to do the work. Yeah, Jordan's smile faded. I have nightmares about the church, the raid, watching you get shot. I wake up thinking you're dead. I have them too, about you alone in that basement, about locking you in. He met her eyes. I was terrified of losing you, so I tried to control you. That's not love. That's not even protection. It's just fear wearing a noble mask. And now? Now I'm choosing fear of living honestly over fear of getting hurt. He reached across the table. I don't know if we work, Jordan. I don't know if two people this broken can build something healthy. But I'd like to try. Slowly. With boundaries and therapy and regular check-ins about whether this is actually working or if we're just trauma bonding. Jordan took his hand. That's the least romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. Is it working? Yeah, she squeezed his fingers. It really is. They talked for 3 hours. About her work, the cases she was building, the danger she accepted as part of the job. About his work, teaching former criminals legitimate skills, breaking cycles of violence through financial literacy. I have to ask, Jordan said as the cafe began to close around them. In the church, before everything went wrong, did you mean it? The kiss? Mateo didn't look away. Every second of it, and every second after where I wished I'd done it differently, sooner, better, without all the fear attached. We can't go back. I know. He stood, then pulled her up with him. But we're here now, and I'm not behind a collar or a locked door, so if you wanted to... Jordan kissed him, not desperate like in the church, not fueled by adrenaline and fear of dying. This was different, deliberate, honest. Two people choosing each other with full knowledge of the cost. When they broke apart, Mateo was smiling, really smiling. Was that okay? Jordan asked. Too much? It was perfect, also terrifying. I haven't kissed anyone in 7 years, and I'm pretty sure I just forgot how to breathe. You'll get lots of practice. Presumptuous, confident, she linked her arm through his. Walk me to the border? They walked slowly, savoring the ordinary moment. The crossing, Mateo stopped. Will I see you again? Do you want to? Yes, but ask me again in a week. Make sure I mean it when the therapy session isn't still fresh. Jordan laughed, then kissed his cheek. Thursday, same time, assuming neither of us is dead. Deal. Mateo taught forensic accounting to at-risk youth in Monterey, kids targeted by cartels for recruitment. He showed them how numbers could expose corruption instead of enabling it. Jordan guest lectured. They maintained professional boundaries in class, but everyone could see the chemistry when they thought no one was watching. After class, a student asked, "Are you two together?" Jordan and Mateo looked at each other. They'd had this conversation 6 times in therapy, arguing about labels and definitions and what together even meant for two people learning to be healthy. We're working on it, Jordan said. Slowly, Mateo added. The student looked confused. Why slowly? In unison. Because we're both terrible at following rules. They smiled, easy, genuine, the kind of smile that only comes after doing the hard work of earning it. Later, walking to Jordan's car, Mateo took her hand. I love you. In case that wasn't clear. I love you too. In case you still doubted. I don't doubt anymore. Well, he paused. I doubt a lot of things. My worthiness, whether I deserve this, if I'll ever feel clean. But I don't doubt that you see me clearly and choose me anyway. That's..." His voice caught. "That's everything." Jordan pulled him close. "We're never going to be that couple who gets a clean, happy ending. There's too much blood on both our ledgers." But we get this. Messy, complicated, doing the work love, where we choose each other every day and call each other on our shit and actually show up for therapy. Sounds exhausting. It is. She kissed him. But it's real. And I'll take real over perfect every single time. Mateo held her, breathing in the moment. Sunshine, car exhaust, the sounds of students laughing as they left campus. Ordinary life, the kind he'd never thought he'd deserve. "Thank you," he murmured against her hair. "For what?" "For waiting at that border, for giving me a reason to walk through the door." Jordan pulled back to look at him. "You did that yourself. I just held the space for you to decide." Semantics. Important ones. They stood there, two former fugitives from different kinds of prisons, holding each other in a parking lot like it was the most radical act of defiance they could imagine. Because for them, it was. Choosing love after violence, choosing trust after betrayal, choosing to build something honest after years of lies. Not perfect, not clean, but theirs. And that was enough.